Hello dear chess friends of International Chess School. Today we will continue to study the four elements of the attack with a game played in September 2011 at the World Chess Cup in Khanty-Mansi between the Grandmasters Inarkiev Ernesto from Russia, rated 2679, against another Grandmaster from Ukraine, Moisenko Alexander, rated 2715. Black just played Queen e7, offering a queen's exchange, while White refused the offer under the impression that the pawn from e5 assures him the space advantage, and he probably believed that Black's king will be in danger due to the weaknesses on light squares, on dark squares. d6, f6, h6 and g7 all tend to be weak. White's problem is that in the absence of the dark squares bishop, it's very difficult to use these weak squares, and the knight, which can be installed on d6, for example, must cross to a light square, and for example, after knight d4, bishop takes e4 can follow, and Black will have a knight versus bishop in a position with 8 pawns on the board, which means that the light squares bishop from f1 will be restricted. Anyway, from competitional point of view, the decision is justified. It seems that White can easily improve the position of rook a1 and then to create some pressure along the d file. White's plan is simple. He will install the rook on d1, then he will play d3, d4, and then he will try to create pressure on the backwarded pawn from d7. Otherwise he will manage to push d4, d5 if Black doesn't take on d4 with the c pawn. Black played f5. Of course, Black will enjoy a central pawn superiority, and it will open the f file in case of e takes f6. In such cases, White should avoid making such trades, which offers a central, very active pawn for Black's lateral pawn. But this decision is double-edged, since Black is able to launch a quick attack on the king's side, and the speed of the attack will be increased by the tempo moves. Black will gain precious time by creating threats. Queen d1, short castle, bishop e2. Of course, White tries to improve the position of his worst placed minor piece. Knight f4, bishop f3. Now, with the help of these two moves maneuver, White was able to neutralize the powerful bishop from p7. Bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, and g5, defending the knight, and at the same time Black's pieces are gathering momentum. Sooner or later g5, g4 with tempo will follow, and even if white has enough counter chances from aesthetical point of view, it looks that black's attack is more dangerous. White continued with the rook a1, and black retired with the knight on g6. Maybe is not the best option, but it is the most aggressive one. White's has an overwhelming central superiority after d3, d4, and black decision to start this pawn storm on the king side was the best option. Till now we have discussed about this central e5 pawn as a support for a knight on these weak squares, d6 or f6, and also such a pawn can play the role of a barrier, restricting black's pieces in defense. But in this case, when white tries to penetrate along the d file and then maybe on the 7th rank, the pawn from e5 will act in black's favor, since black's attack will be delivered on F, G and H file. In this case, the position resembles of a position with castles on different wings, because each side tries to increase the speed and to quickly bring all the pieces in attack. It's like a short distance athletic race where the opponents are running on parallel lanes. You'll see that white's and black's attack don't crossroad in this game. d4, g4, queen e3, and c4. Black tries to keep the center stable, and first of all he wants to gain some space. The next pawn to be pushed will be the f pawn, and then rook lift, rook f5, rook h5 will be possible. Of course, white doesn't have to commit with a move like g3, which creates weaknesses on light squares, and it has to continue his expansion in the center. White continued with d5, f4. Black gained 3 or 4 tempos, attacking the white queen, but the position is still balanced. Queen d4, rook f5. Now, besides the idea of installing the rook on the h file, black keeps the e5 pawn under pressure also. Anyway, while black will penetrate along the h file and it will create pressure on the h2, white has to define his purpose. His purpose is to get nearby the black king, and the 7th rank is the most vulnerable rank in at the black king's proximity. On the 7th rank, a lot of weak squares arise after the queen will be on h4 and the rook on h5. If white had figured out that the 7th rank plays an important role, he will have won the game, I suppose. Instead he was afraid of black's attack, because black's moves are easier to find, and it looks like h2 is really undefendable. In fact, white has can slow down black's attack by pushing h2, h3 and sacrificing the pawn. D takes e6, d takes. Now we have a loose rook on a8 hanging, and knight d5 is the logical way to exploit this and to bring the knight into the battle. The knight is untouchable, since after e takes d5, queen takes d5, king g7, queen takes a8. There's no time for rook h5, for example, preparing queen h4, since white can simply play e6, queen h4, rook d7, king h6, h3. This is the safest way to slow down black's attack. And after g takes h3, white can play something like queen g8, and then threaten queen g7 followed by rook d5 check. Objectively speaking, after knight d5, white's position is better. He has this powerful pawn on e5. It has centralized rooks, an active queen, and then his king is protected by some pawns, while the black king is exposed. But white has to use such tactics like knight d5 and to surround somehow the white king, to shoulder the black king by the queen side. He can penetrate with the queen on b6 or d7, and during this time black's attack seems more direct and more forced. Black king has a lot of free squares around, while white king can't escape by playing king f1, king e2 at some point because of f4, f3. Black didn't capture the knight. He played queen h4, which is logical, and now it was the first critical moment of the battle. During this attack on both kings, white had to play knight f6. It is the ideal square, it is an outpost, and instead of using this kind of principles, for example, after knight f6 check, king g7 doesn't work because of queen d7, king h8, and now there are a lot of winning moves: rook d2, rook e4, or queen b6. He can threaten the e6 pawn this way, but the basic threat here is rook d8, which removes the last defender from a8, and then the queen will end on g8 with decisive threats. And a move like knight d5 doesn't work here because of rook d8. There's no time for black to grab that pawn. Rook takes d8, queen takes, king g7, and knight e8. We know that the couple queen knight in attack is very dangerous, but when black has also a hanging queen on h4, there's a lot of tactics around. The same idea to exploit the exposed black pieces, the uncoordinated pieces, but only at this move black's pieces are uncoordinated. Can be met in the line if white doesn't play queen b6. If he plays rook d2 after knight d5, knight d7, and again we have a lot of undefended pieces in black's camp. Anyway, this is the logical way to continue, and even grandmasters can lose their head in such positions. Knight f6 has another advantage because it cut down the possibility of rook h5. White played knight c7. He started with the assumption that grabbing the e6 pawn will assure him the advantage, but white doesn't need material advantage. It has to create stronger threats, and when you are in attack and you have the speed, you have the momentum, you have to create the decisive threats, mate threats, or to gain serious material advantage. Black played rook h5. Of course, after knight a8, queen h2, and after king f1, f3, and white king is trapped. There's no runaway, and during this time the black king can hide on h6 if white starts to check. So rook h5, h3, now rook f8, knight takes e6, g takes h3, and white missed the last chance here. The knight arrives after an extra move on the 6th rank. Anyway, it's a dominant position. It's not f6 where the knight was supported, but from e6 the knight can be coordinated with the queen, and queen d7 was compulsory. Sometimes when you are with the back at the wall, you can find strong moves like this one. Rook f7, forced queen c8, knight f8, rook d8, rook f5. Of course, rook takes f8 was threatened. Knight takes, rook takes, and queen f5 using the pin Also rook takes f8, rook takes f8, queen takes h3 is winning, queen takes f5, rook takes d8, g takes h3, and it is white who has an extra pawn and better chances to win. So what you have to remember after this game is that it is not enough to create a local piece superiority. You have to coordinate your pieces. While black's pieces are excellently coordinated, but they're isolated along the h file, white's pieces are uncoordinated, and a nice way to coordinate the queen with the knight was along the 7th rank. Knight takes f8. Now white is lost. H takes g2, threatening queen h1 mate. Queen d5. King takes. Black has any time the maneuver king g7, king h6 at his disposal, while the g6 knight is covering the f8 square. Of course, queen takes g2 doesn't work because of rook g5. Queen d8 check. Queen takes, rook takes, king e7. It is important to use tempo moves, because tempo moves increases the speed, the momentum of the attack. Rook ed1, f3. Now I would like to turn back a little. There's 3 threats in this position. One is king takes d8. The second is rook h1, gaining the rook from e1. With the move rook ed1, white defended against 2 of these threats. The rook are defending each other now, and rook h1 will fail because of king takes g2. But there's the third rook, the third threat, f4, f3, trapping the king on g1. Rook 1 d7. Black doesn't have to relax yet until the checks are over, and until he's sure that he figured out all the threats behind white's moves. King e6, rook d6 check. Here is the first trap after king takes e5, rook d5 will follow, gaining the rook from h5. King f5, rook f6 check. One more time, king takes e5 is bad because rook takes f3. So king e4, and white was forced to sacrifice a whole rook. Rook d4, king takes d4, rook takes f3, knight takes e5, rook takes f4, king d5, king takes g2, rook g5. White continued for a few more moves. It was the only decisive game of the match between these 2 grandmasters of the World Cup, and eventually white resigns. What was important in this game was the fact that black's attack, even if wasn't so powerful as white's attack, was more direct and exerted an additional psychological pressure, and at the proper moment the useful pawn from e5 hampered white pieces to defend the vulnerable pawn from h2. So such a pawn can play an important role, but at the same time it might restrict the coordination between your pieces. And another important point is that it is not enough to have a local pieces superiority. The pieces have to be coordinated by a rook or by a queen, and it has to be a collaboration between the attacking